So welcome to JCL Art of Teaching conference number, is it number 1 because last year was 0? So I want to express that I'm very happy that you decided to give us or give yourself the Saturday time, because I think it should be nice and beneficial for you, and I want to express my gratitude for you for being or willing to develop your skills and share your ideas and share your experience. I would like to thank to all who arranged for this conference, most of whom Shimon. Takže thank you, Shimone. Along with him are many other people. I won't name them because I would forget some of them. But I would like to thank to all of the organizers and all of the speakers, because it took some effort to prepare, and sometimes they needed to be, I don't want to say persuaded, but maybe encouraged by Shimon and others. So thank you very much. The rest of you who don't speak, please be nice to the speakers so they're willing to do this in the next years. So thank you. And before we start the conference itself, we would like to announce one competition that was taking place in the summer in general. And this competition is called the Lesson Plan of a Year. And this came like an idea from our innovative meeting, but it was actually inspired by the development centers, because some of you were in the development centers, and there was an idea we should share our lesson plans, or we should share our experience in a place where everyone could look at. And Hanki just arranged for that, wrote up the competition, and we got the lesson plans, and we have the winners of it, and we have the final product. And the final product is Almanac of Lesson Plans, and Hanki will tell you a little more about that.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everybody who sent us their lesson plans. We had really great lesson plans. I was one of the jury members, and when I started reading through the first 5, I gave them each my vote. So I realized I just stopped doing that and overlooked them. But it shows the quality of the lesson plans that we received. I want to thank to all the members of the jury, from our senior teachers, our HR team, and our key teachers. It was not an easy job, let me tell you. We have 3/4 winners. Because they're on the 3rd place, we have 2 people who receive the same amount of votes. The first 3rd place that I'm going to announce goes to a person who tackled an incredibly difficult topic and an incredibly boring topic at the same time, and it's questions with prepositions at the end. And he tackled that topic incredibly well, because he made it into a really fun lesson about making children. And this person was Ben Rishavi. And since Ben likes books and methodology, he got a voucher to Neoluxor. Now, the other 3rd place is a person who is going to get a prize that doesn't really fit the theme of his or her lesson plan. He's going to get a voucher to Pivovarský klub, because like a Brit, he likes beer. But his lesson plan was actually about sports, and it's Declan Carey. So, and the funny thing is that the first 2 places are Czech teachers, so teachers of Czech for foreigners. And there are only 2 lesson plans submitted from our Czech for Foreigners teachers, and they won the first and the second place, so I thought it was sort of ironic. Unfortunately, the second place cannot be here, but it was a great lesson plan during which the students are making their own pudding, and it was designed by Jitka Pourová, so congratulations. Jitka is a fan of theater, so she got vouchers for theater tickets to Divadlo Viola. And finally, the first place, I'm really happy that this person won, because it was not just this one lesson plan, but also throughout all the past few months. If you're careful readers of Logbook, she has always brilliant, innovative ideas and great activities and lesson plans that we can all learn from. And this lesson plan was about being at an optician and ordering glasses. And it was designed by Bára Hušáková. And as Ondra mentioned, we've already chose from all the lesson plans that we received, we chose, in the end, it was 17 lesson plans that are going to make the almanac. And here are all the people who are going to be published there and the topics of their lessons. The almanac will be published by the end of the year. So thank you again, and congratulations.
That's it.
So, again, good morning and welcome. My name is Jakub. This is Shimon, and since one of our roles here at JCL is leading workshops and trainings, we wanted to put a speech together about why we should never stop learning as teachers. Now, why should we never stop learning? If somebody asked me that, I would say that the answer is quite simple. Learning, teaching, and stopping actually don't go together. Because by definition, learning is a change. It is, when we learn, we change the way we see the world around us. Or in our case, as language teachers, maybe we change the way certain people see languages. And of course, the subject matter of our daily routine, language, changes. In the 19th century, during the Czech national movement, Czech was fighting all the influences that it had from German. We don't even have to go back into history. I think that French is going through something very similar at the moment. There are loads of new technological things coming to France, and they come with English names, and the French are really trying to fight it. They didn't even accept the word for hipster. They have their own word for hipster, which is bobo. I think it's hilarious. And of course, English, that is sort of our daily bread, is changing a lot. At the moment, the ratio in communication amongst non-native speakers and native speakers is 3:1. As I'm speaking, I'm probably increasing it even more. And of course, this has a huge impact on English, and it has a huge impact on the way it is taught as well as perceived. I got to grow through the change. When I started high school in 2001, we had a native teacher of English, and for the first time in the history of our high school, this teacher was an American. And the parents were not very happy about that, because they were worried that their children are not going to learn the proper British English. Thanks, Mark. I have good news for you, it's changing. In 2009, graduated from high school, started teaching, and I had the honor to start my career next to one of the most talented teachers and linguists that I've ever met, and who happened to be British. And over a pint one night, he said that he doesn't have enough classes because he always gets kicked out of all the classes because his students can't understand him because of his British accent. So, yeah, Ben, sorry. So, within only 8 years, there is quite a radical change in the language that we teach. And of course, if nothing else, our audience changes. And it changes all the time. Last year at this very conference, we had a living example of it. We had 2 high school students who were so sick of Headway that they decided to write their own book called Improve Yourself.
So let me illustrate this idea of a change by telling you a little story. Okay, I started teaching back in 2003. I came back from Scotland, got to a bachelor's program, and I was thinking like, what am I gonna do with my life? What kind of job should I get? So I said, I can start teaching, right? Doesn't require much of an effort. It's easy job, easy money. So I got to this small language school. I started teaching teenagers and adults. And what I did, I had no idea what I was doing. Okay, I just copied the teacher's books, followed them word for word, did all the exercises. And funny enough, it was interesting. All the students, they followed me, and they just did whatever I told them to do, without asking me why. They just did it, and I felt really good about myself. I felt like I've got this authority. Yeah, it's kind of cool. All right, they just do what I tell them. That's awesome. Well, as the years progressed, the onslaught of the internet came, and I could actually compare myself to all the other teachers on YouTube, okay? And I realized that I'm not that good. Actually, I'm pretty terrible. So that's what I realized that after seeing all these different people. Second thing that came to my mind is that my students can actually go on YouTube as well, and they compare me to other teachers and see that there are better things and different ways how to learn certain things. There are different and more useful methods and more efficient methods. And that made me think that maybe, in a way, that the role of a teacher as a sort of a monopoly on knowledge is gone. It's crumbling away. It's past that. We are not anymore the holders of knowledge, right? We are sort of guides on the way. There are many research papers written on this topic about 21st century role of teachers, and they all agree on one thing, that our role has shifted a lot. We are no more just the pylons of knowledge, but rather we are helpers, enablers, if you like, motivators. We are there to navigate you on your way rather than to drive it for you. Those who were here last year, you remember Carolyn Andrews, she was talking about the future of teaching. She was talking about all the different changes in the world and how it's going to affect us, teachers. And for example, she mentioned the 2 words like automatization and robotization of industry and how it's going to impact us as teachers. I have high hopes that my job is pretty much secure. Okay? I can tell you that your job is also pretty much secure, because teachers use 2 important things in their job, in their career: critical thinking and creativity. And those 2 things AI is not capable of yet. What is interesting, about 80% of jobs that our kids or kids who are now at school will do in the future don't exist yet. About 60% of people who are currently now working in industry, manufacturing, services will lose their jobs. In about 20 years ago, they'll be replaced by machines. All these people will have to learn something new. And very likely they will need language for it, which means our job is pretty much safe. It's kind of a good thing to know. Last year we had here David. David, where are you? Over there. David had a speech. He had a talk on apps. Do you remember that? Yep. Many of those apps are now quite dated. They have been replaced by better versions, more immersive versions. New apps were created since then. And what he talked about is somewhat relevant, but most of it is somewhat dated. It kind of shows you that our field, the field of education, the field of technology and education, is in a constant flux. And it's important to be able to accept those changes and to learn from them and somehow incorporate them in our own teaching. And that's one of the reasons why we organize this conference, is to critically think about our job, is to be able to inspire each other, to learn from each other, and ultimately deliver a better service to our clients.
And the topic of the conference is beyond the ordinary, because we believe that we have to go beyond the ordinary every single day. Teaching requires going beyond the ordinary. And it doesn't need to be a big realization like the one that Shimon was describing a few seconds ago. It really is an everyday thing. Let me explain on an example. When we get our teaching certificate, when we do the course, we're learning how to teach, And we're working with this idea of an ordinary, average model student. We come to JCL, we go through trainings, and again, it's this idea of a model, average, ordinary student. Then we get to class, and there's a human on the other side of the table. There is no model student.
They don't exist.
And in order to actually teach that particular person, we need to go beyond the ordinary, beyond the idea of this ordinary student. The person who actually made me start thinking about this is Monica over there. She had a talk last year about being a human teacher. And after she gave the talk, we decided to turn it into a workshop as well. And the first meeting we had together, she said to me, "You know, you're not going to like this workshop very much." Okay, why? Well, you know, you work as a methodologist, and this workshop actually shows how you need to push methodology aside when you're actually teaching a human. And it really made me think, so I thank her for that.
Based on this and on the last conference as well, we try to prepare a lineup of talks and workshops alike that will somehow inspire you, show you new things. So what we have prepared for you today is a lot of cool stuff. We have here a person, for example, a person who's going to be talking, or a speaker who's going to be talking on self-reflection and how can we use that as a self-feedback method. There is going to be a talk on efficient homework system. There is going to be a talk by one of the gurus of live action role-playing in this country on role-playing and how to use it as a teaching method and why are we afraid of using it and why students don't want to participate when it comes to role-plays. We have 2 workshops that will take you the extra mile, give you another edge on your teaching. So seeing you all here actually fills me with kind of an emotion that I have to share with you, and that emotion is joy. I'm really happy that you are here, because that shows you that you are interested in becoming a better version of yourself.
And in order to become a better version of ourselves, we have to do one important thing. Goes back to critical thinking that Shimon was talking about. And this is asking ourselves questions. And let me ask you one of those questions and link it with joy. Do you feel joy when teaching? Yes, put your hand up who feels joy when teaching. Tanya, you said yes very quickly. Why do you feel joy when teaching? I'll give you the microphone for a second.
I just love it. That's everything. Love being with my students and sharing the knowledge together.
Okay, hands up.
All right.
Who feels joy when teaching? Okay.
All right, David, you earned it.
I guess the nicest thing about it is that I have the chance to walk into a room with someone that I don't know very well, but eventually get to know very well, and I have sort of an hour or 90 minutes with them to sort of take them out of their environment and put them into a new one, and I can explore new sort of things with them, and I can always leave knowing, or at least I think I leave knowing that I've made some difference for this person. And if you do that, if you have a really busy schedule and you do this 5 times a day, that's pretty addictive and joy-inducing.
Thank you.
I'm probably very lucky because my students are highly motivated and disciplined, and I can see they love English, they want to improve, and I can see their improvement lesson after lesson. So
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Can I get your students, please?
I consider myself really lucky because I used to be a winemaker and I specialize in teaching wine English. So I have some private students where I drink wine with them. And I actually show them how to describe wine in English. So it's a perfect lesson.
That's a perfect blend. Wow. I think Heather had her hand up over there.
I was just going to say, I hope this is an answer to the question, but I was just going to say what I value, among the things that I value the most about teaching is that I think we're in a really honoured position as language teachers to be able to deal with almost any topic in lessons. So I find one of the things that really brings joy in the students is that they're able to talk about and to work on on subjects that they're really passionate about and motivated for, so they're not restricted to the topic of their work environment or whatever, and we can get away from that. So I feel that I learn a lot from my students, and we discuss so many themes, and I love being able to take articles about just about any theme in the world, and talk about that. So I think that's one of the joys of teaching for me, is that we can really learn about anything, basically.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, very good. One more person, I think Andres over there. Good. Sorry. Kuba doesn't hear me probably over there.
I think I'm able to come up with two reasons. One is that I used to be a high school teacher where you teach bigger groups, and I have always wanted to come to know the people better, but in such a big group it's not always possible.
Mm-hmm.
So for me it's amazing to be a teacher here, and I've got lots of individual courses. So for me it's amazing to finally be able to get to know somebody, learn their desires, learn their goals, motivations, and kind of work around with that. And then when I see they're excited about going that way, makes me happy. And the other thing is, I think this is the topic you are going to be delivering today, beyond the ordinary. Sometimes I've met with the challenge already, like totally demotivated students, but like thinking they're too unteachable.
Oh, right,
so like
sure.
to come up with how to teach them was quite a challenge. And actually at some point I found myself saying, well, do you remember Prince of Persia? You just need to go step by step to a higher level, and that kind of worked.
That's a pretty good analogy there.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Finland has been redefining its education system, the state's education system. They've started in the 80s, and only now they're seeing results of their change. They have made a radical change, and one of the things that the Finns came with is that one of the pivotal roles of education is that people feel joy when they are learning. They believe in happiness coming from the activity of learning something new. They believe that learning should not be restricted. They believe in the fact that children should feel happy when going to school, should feel happy coming back. And I thought that was amazing. Then I looked up different research and different researchers around the world, and they all kind of agree on this thing, that one of the pillars of long-term quality learning is that we feel joy when we're actually learning something. We feel happy about it. And I'm pretty sure you have some students who when they come into class, and when you come into class, they're like, and they really like to see you, and they have good relationship with, and then you have some students who are like, and you're thinking like, is it me? Is it the day? Is it the job? What's going on? Right? So it's good to learn, or it's good to think about this joy, and why is the joy not there? One of the reasons is pretty simple. Have you ever heard of something called the Einstellung effect? Anyone? It's basically how our brains are set up. The way how we approach world is that we see a problem and we have a solution for the problem. If the problem keeps repeating, we develop a certain habitual pattern. We just keep doing it. And interesting enough, if something similar comes up, a similar problem to the one we solved so many times, we apply the same solution because it kind of works. The problem is with this that after a while, we fail to see possible better solutions and more efficient solutions. And this extremely well applies on teaching. When you ask students, when you come to a new class and you ask a student, hey, I have these ideas, and he says like, well, I'm kind of used to working with the book, I do the grammar activities, I don't want to talk anymore, and I just want to do this stuff and nothing else. This works for me. And then you try to see if that's really true or not. And you try to ask these critical questions. I had once, after an observation, I had a meeting with a teacher, and I asked her, like, have you ever thought about, teaching differently, or, about this and that? And she told me, I've been teaching like this for 20 years, I don't see any reason to change it. And I was like, wow, okay. That was pretty hostile. But maybe there is a way around that, around the Einstellung effect. The thing is, we have to keep critically thinking. And the only way how to critically think about our own teaching is to actually keep learning, is to ask ourselves these questions, learn new things so we can look at ourselves from different perspectives and different angles. Learn about new methods, even if you dislike them or we disagree with them, just to see if they work. Maybe work with them for a while and see, test the students, see what happens. You know, use them as little guinea pigs. Joking. See what happens. Okay.
Let me tell you about how I first encountered Shimon. I first encountered Shimon as an author of a logbook article about exactly what he was talking about earlier, the change of the role of the teacher in the 21st century. So while this change is fascinating, what fascinates me as well, or maybe even more, is the stuff that has remained the same for centuries. When I first encountered the communicative method, it was the first few days of TEFL, and I thought that was a complete revolution. I thought, this is brilliant. I've never been taught this way, and it's such a powerful tool. I can do loads of cool things with this. And even though it was revolutionary at the time, now that I think back to the basis of this method and the communicative approach, it's been with us for centuries, ever since our great teacher of our civilization, Socrates. He actually has this question that he asks one of his guests. He said, how do we better understand something? By pure lecture or by asking questions and therefore involving the listener? And the guest answers, if you have a pleasant and open-minded companion, it is, of course,
worry about it.
It is, of course, better to ask questions. And indeed, all of Plato's books are dialogues where Socrates is asking questions. And actually, in one of them, in the Republic, Socrates gets attacked by one of his listeners for exactly this, for asking questions. One of the listeners says, if you're so smart, you need to be giving me a lecture. You need to be telling me how things are and not ask me all these stupid questions. So I think that we can all relate to it. I think that we've always had this, we've all had this student who just says, okay, present perfect, can you just tell me and check what it is and stop with these stupid cards and stupid questions, stupid eliciting, just forget it. Yeah, just tell me. And Plato is the master of questions. That's what I like about him. And so are we. I'm sorry, loads of you have heard it from me already. Some of you probably more than once. But, hi Laura. But we live in the time of answers and statements. When we scroll down, Facebook is just full of statements. Google has all the answers. But something that we're actually missing a lot is questions. Yeah, all the great things in the world came up from a brilliant question. Look at the theory of relativity. Einstein asked himself a beautiful question. He thought, if I'm sitting on a ray of light, am I going to be able to shave? Am I going to be able to see my reflection in the mirror? And that's how the whole theory started. And I really feel honored to be sort of able to go around and ask people questions. It's a brilliant thing. I feel honored that I can be part of this long tradition of teachers going back to Socrates. And tradition, that's the key sort of word, because in order for it to be a tradition, it needs to be alive. Otherwise, it just becomes a museum. It's just that sort of things that we go look at. When I think about my own teaching, my motivation has constantly been changing. The first motivation was something that Heather was describing. It is like I can go to all these different companies and get to know all these different people and talk to them about anything I want. That's pretty brilliant. Then I thought, wow, that's really cool what I'm doing. I'm actually teaching people to speak to one another and communicate, often across cultures. It's pretty cool thing that I'm doing. Now I have a different motivation. Now I think about the questions, the questions I can ask my students and provoke their thinking. So even though my motivation has always been changing, it's always different, it never left me. It never ceased to be quite strong, so it sort of remained the same. And I think that's very natural because, of course, as we teach, we learn. We learn about teaching.
To build on what Kuba is saying, basically when you start being a teacher, the first thing you are doing is you're learning the ropes. You're learning the theories, you're learning the methodology, you're learning how to build a lesson. You spend 3 hours planning a 45-minute lesson and you have everything written down to a minute. right? And you go like, and then the person asks you something else, you're like, no, my lesson plan. So we learn all these things, and then once we learn them, once we somewhat master that, and we have the motivation and we learn all that, it's time to ask the ultimate question is, what kind of impact I have on my student? What is the person leaving with? Let me tell you a little story. I had a student once who told me this super shocking sentence that made me think a lot. He told me one day, "It is you who largely defines my relationship to education or to learning a language." And I was like, what? Me? And I was like, wow, he's kind of right. And there are like 3 thoughts that come out of that. First of all, if I fail as a teacher, if I fail to be a human teacher, if I fail to ask the right questions, if I fail to bring the joy to the lesson, then I'm sort of spoiling the person for the rest of his life. He's going to feel miserable. He's going to feel terrible at teaching generally. He's going to feel like he's not empowered to change. He's not empowered to change whatever he is learning at the moment. And it's going to spill over to all the areas of his learning. That was the first thought I had. So I should be careful about that. The second thought I had in my head was, I failed as a teacher because I failed to explain to my student that it is not me who drives his learning, but is rather him. I'm more like a navigator sitting next to him when he's driving the car. But he felt that I'm driving the car and he's there like for the ride. And he just follows the directions and he like, yeah, I'm kind of like want to go to McDonald's. I'm like, no, we're going to go forward. Okay, I'm just going to go. And the third thing, that the Einstellung effect is really mighty adversary, because to fight it is quite difficult. Once you introduce your student to something new or something extraordinary, something beyond the ordinary, what happens in the human brain is that we kind of roll back to our primary learning strategies, which we actually acquire as kids, mostly in primary school, the first couple of years. And when it comes to Czechs, their learning strategies are all pretty bad. So they kind of roll back to this idea that teacher is the driver, I am the listener, I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. I need to fight to change this mental state of people that we are not the drivers, we are there just to help them drive. We are the mechanics, we are the navigators, we are the dudes who know which kind of gasoline or petrol, diesel, what to put in the car, right? Like not that one. But we are not there to drive the car. However, the impact on the student doesn't have to be just purely negative, right?
Right. I think that David described it beautifully a few moments ago. Yeah, we always have a chance to give the student something else than just the language, the present perfect. And I like to call it the added value of teaching. Whether it is a question that they would never ask themselves without us, whether it is an interesting article, as Heather mentioned, something that they would not have come across usually, whether it is just the fact that we're sitting there listening to them. It's something that doesn't happen that often these days. That's our job to do that. Whether it is a game or a song, we have the power, and I think that everybody has experienced that. When we walk into the classroom, the student walks into the classroom, and their mood is horrible. They're just in a miserable mood. And then 1 hour with us, and they're leaving with a smile on their face. I think that's brilliant. Yeah? That when we talk about joy, I think that that's definitely one of the joys of teaching. And I think that if we are aware of this added value, of this value of being really human teachers, more being a human than being a teacher, rather, in this case, we can never cease to be motivated to surprise the student with a new thing, with a new article, a new idea, a new concept. And I love to see that happening. And I have loads of opportunities, particularly with Jen, who teaches my boss, Martina. Yeah. And she always surprises her. And she surprises her up to the point where Martina, after the lesson, goes and talks to me about the lesson and the methods that Jen used. Yeah. So that's a great example of this.
So let me close this speech or this talk that's getting too long now. That if we keep our minds open, and if we keep our hearts open, our eyes open, and if we actually keep learning to better ourselves, we ultimately better also our students. So let's not be afraid, let's keep an open mind, and let's go beyond the ordinary. Thank you.